What's up, everybody? Thank you for choosing the video. Welcome to the channel, and welcome to another episode of the Storytime Podcast. We're going to get into a pretty wild story that happened to me in the bush. That's the point of this podcast. But yeah, hiked out to this spot. It's so calm today. It's actually really nice. No wind, but it's very warm. So anyways, let's get into the story. Okay, so the story goes, for about a year and a half I lived in northern British Columbia. 6 months of it was actually living in the bush. A little tiny, you can't even call it a town, to be honest. It's more like a village, even like a little tiny town called Manson Creek. And then I lived in Fort St. John after that. So one thing that I never really, I guess, kind of grasped was the wildlife, the difference between, say, here in Ontario and the wildlife in northern British Columbia. British Columbia in its entirety, but I didn't really grasp the difference. Even living in the bush, I didn't see any wildlife, for one. I think it was because of the human footprint that was there. There was a lot of gold mines and whatnot along or close to the town, but I didn't really see any wildlife while living in the bush. When I moved to Fort St. John, there was like deer and whatnot, but again, didn't really see any wildlife, so I never really took it in what I was surrounded by, you know, grizzly bear and cougars and big animals that aren't here, right? And so I had gone out into the bush to film a video. In fact, if you're an old follower of mine, you actually witnessed this happen because I started to film it. But anyways, I had gone out into the bush to film, you know, hiked out, found a spot. I believe it was a beer o'clock that I was doing, but I'm not 100% on what video it was. But I hiked out, found a spot, I got a fire going. I remember the bugs were absolutely crazy. They were driving me nuts, so the smoky fire actually helped. But as I sat down, I got my camera ready, I started filming, and in behind me, it was wild. In behind me, I heard a bunch of commotion, like a lot of commotion. It wasn't two squirrels running, put it that way. It was a lot of commotion. And so I looked over, and I see a deer running for its life. It was running so fast through the bush, and where I had set up there was a valley that I had set up right on the edge of the valley, so you can see inside the valley. And this deer came running up to the valley, and it stopped basically dang near beside me. It was maybe 10-15 yards away from me. It stopped at the valley, and it looked around, and then it looked at me, and then it looked back into the valley, and it just jumped into the valley. And so I was like, oh wow. And so I grabbed my camera and I started to film the deer. So I was like, this is crazy. And it actually, it jumped down into the valley and got stuck in mud. And it was like up to its, you know, I don't know if that would be an elbow on a deer, but it was deep. This deer was stuck, and it was trying its hardest to get out of the mud. And what I didn't realize at the time was it was actually a pregnant doe, because it was very big and you could tell. I didn't at the time, I don't know why, but looking back at it when I was editing the video, I was like, oh, that was a pregnant doe. So yeah, I had grabbed my camera and I started to film the deer, and it was struggling trying to get out of the mud. And I was like, wow, this is crazy. You know, this deer just came out of nowhere. It was, you know, jumped into the valley. It was wow. Like, I couldn't understand what was going on. And then all of a sudden, in the back of my head, line. All of a sudden, in the back of my head, I was like, what was the deer running from? Why is the deer running and then jump into a valley? Like, it was like life or death for the deers. I started to realize, like, what was chasing the deer? And that's the name of this episode, because I didn't put two and two together that the deer was running from something. And so, all of a sudden I was like, what's chasing the deer? Why is the deer running for its life, jumping into a valley, getting stuck, and still trying to pull out and get out of this mud? Which, by the way, it ended up getting out of the mud, and it climbed up the other side of the valley and then just took off. And so I'm sitting there, fire going. I'm trying to film a video, and then in my head is like, what was chasing the deer? What is in behind the deer? And so I kind of went into panic mode, because again, I think it hit me then what animals I was surrounded by, like grizzly bear. It could have been a grizzly bear, it could have been a cougar, it could have been a black bear, it could have been a mountain lion. There's so many animals that are in the bush out there that it hit me like a ton of bricks. It really did. It was like, why? Like, I need to get out of here, because I don't know what's coming after that deer. And so I put the fire out, and what's funny is I filmed, all of this was on film. I'm really upset that I lost all of my videos. I foolishly deleted my old account, which I shouldn't have, but live and learn. But I started filming at that point. I was like, I don't know what is going on with that deer. I'm getting out of here, because I'm wondering if that was a coyote I just saw walking down the trail. Wow. Just out of nowhere. Any ADHD much? But anyways, I went into panic mode, and I was like, I need to get out of this spot. I need to get away from where I am, because normally I would film relatively close to the trail. I would, keep in mind, like, I didn't think about animals. I just thought about, like, I don't want to veer off too far into the bush, right? So I would film close to a trail and know where I am, and be able to walk out easy and stuff like that. This time around, I decided to go in and explore a little bit, explore the bush. And so I was like, I need to get out of here. I need to go back to where I originally filmed, and then I can get this episode done. But what I find kind of funny is, up until that moment, like I said, I had never considered the animals that I'm surrounded by until I saw that deer. And I'll tell you right now, it should have clicked almost immediately because of how the deer was acting. Like I said, when it got to the valley, it looked over at me, and it didn't care that I was. It's not like it was like, oh, a person, and then jumped. It was it was probably more like, run. You know what I mean? Like, you need to get out of here. Jumped into the valley. It was life or death for that deer. Like, looking back at it, it was really wild to witness that. And I guess a good and bad thing, I suppose, it would have been really cool to see what was chasing the deer, because I don't know. But the other side of that, I suppose, is I didn't want to find out what was chasing that deer. I literally packed up and left as quickly as I could. Like I said, went back to a spot that I was familiar with, which, by the way, was still, bears and whatnot were still around there. In fact, they had signs along the trail that were like, yeah, bears live here. Like, this is what they look like. This is like, and actually, funny enough, no, I don't think it was springtime. I do remember filming during springtime, where bears come out of hibernation, which is not the best time to be in the woods. But yeah, I gotta say, it was by far the freakiest animal encounter, one of them anyways, that I've had. I think getting pushed out by coyotes was pretty freaky, but it was definitely like an eye-opening experience. And then after I would go into the bush after that, I was constantly aware of what is going on, like what animals are around. I know now. And just to witness that deer, absolutely panicking, I guess is the best way to put it, trying to get away from whatever was chasing it. It really opened my eyes to, like, you're surrounded by animals that can do serious damage. Well, all right, everybody. That pretty much sums up this episode. Let me know what you think down below. If you enjoy the podcast or you enjoy my content, do me a huge solid, hit that like button. It helps, spread my channel around. But yeah, we're gonna call it and get on out of here. So I'd like to thank you for watching. I sincerely appreciate it. Thank you to all my subscribers, everyone who watches. I really do appreciate it. I know I say it every time, but it is true. And if you're not subscribed and you enjoy my content, pretty please hit that subscribe button. It really does help me out. And yeah, we'll see you on the next one. Cheers.